The conclusions of the summit in Brussels to the military aid to Ukraine are independent because of the Hungarian branch. Your comment to Budapest?
In general, so that there are no mistakes, Mr. Editor, these conclusions do not bring anything new. The conclusions say that whoever wants to voluntarily help Ukraine on a bilateral basis can do so. Our policy is clear in this. No money, no weapons for Ukraine. We help humanitarily. If they need to cancel something somewhere, we are ready. We opened a direct railway connection between Kiev and Košice. We are taking further humanitarian steps. I would be very happy if there was another joint government of Slovakia and Ukraine in a short time. And we are doing it. Viktor Orbán, whom I value very much, is in a permanent conflict with the EU on the basis of people's funds. You know that the EU has stopped the Hungarian huge amount of funds. And this is quite a reasonable decision of Viktor Orbán, that if these things are not solved, he has no reason to support the conclusions. But you must admit that the conclusions had two parts. The first part was about Ukraine. There we achieved a very significant diplomatic success when it comes to transit. And then there was the second part. That is the renewal of the defense capabilities of the EU. During this time, all 27 member states of the EU voted for Viktor Orbán's return.
Many people compare you to Viktor Orbán. From the point of view of domestic politics, it would probably help you if you were the Hungarian Prime Minister. That means tougher. Is it a political path to behave so that in the end, Robert Fico does not behave like Viktor Orbán?
I'm a sovereign politician. I have never been in the shoes of anyone else. Again, I remember, I value and respect Viktor Orbán as an extraordinarily capable politician who is fighting hard for Hungarian national interests. At the election, on Thursday morning, I said very precisely, if nothing changes about the voluntary contribution to Ukraine, where we do not want to be or are not at the moment, I do not care about any changes to the possible renewal of transit through Ukraine. It happened. So I decided that I would not defend Germany, France, or anyone else to give some money. Moreover, you can decide how much you want, Mr. Editor. If you decide to help Ukraine from a large country, neither Slovakia nor Hungary will help you. We will mainly keep our position. No weapons, no money if it comes to supporting the war. I am a little nervous. The war is in the air. It is the last thing I want in the world to be a war. I do not think that the United States would join the security reserves. I think that the United States will manage their business interests, namely how to get back huge sums of money that they sent to Ukraine as aid for Ukraine. On the other hand, Europe, which has relied on the presence of the US troops in Europe for many years, will have to find a source to be strong enough. And then, of course, it is the Russian Federation, which has its own clear view of what Ukraine should look like. I will continue to say that it does not look good from Ukraine. That's all I can say.
But the United States does not create its own politicians as potential enemies.
I know what you mean.
Donald Trump and Elon Musk do not treat each other as people who have been criticized for a long time.
If someone does something that is not in line with the proper political opinion in Europe, they will stop you. I was shocked when I started reading in some Slovak media that Donald Trump is not just an American Putin. I appreciate these things. For God's sake, let's respect each other. These are the United States of America. They have their own policy. The American president said America first. Let's make America great again. Let's make our own policy. Let's respect each other. Now it's up to us. What are we crying about? We cannot pretend that because the American President Donald Trump has a different opinion, he is the same as the American Putin. I do not even deny this. This is typical for the European Union. As soon as someone says something that they do not like, they stick to it. I do not like this.
The United States is openly talking about the replacement of Volodymyr Zelensky. Would such an exchange benefit by talking about the measure?
Zelensky is very angry at me for this. Does the war benefit Zelensky? In my opinion, yes. I know it's hard to say now. It benefits because it still receives significant financial assistance from some countries. There is also a question of elections, since the war does not require elections. If you look at some research, I have now looked at the internet documents. His statements are not about anything else, Mr. Prime Minister. What are you talking about now? About the war. Wait a minute. After what happened to the United States, I must say that his statement was not completely different. He immediately says that there are some examples Until now, he has always told me that the example is only for the weak. Once again, there will be no elections in Ukraine if there is a war, and it is evident. I speak from internal sources. I do not quote from DNI. We have internal sources with which we work, where it turns out that in the case of the presidential election, Zelensky was not successful in Ukraine. There are all kinds of assumptions. Imagine that there is an assumption that someone would like to arm and finance a large army in Ukraine. And what if he wins a candidate who will be pro-Russian? You know, there is a lot of risk. Therefore, in the case of Mr. Zelensky, I will not comment on statements at his address. I myself experienced what Mr. Zelensky said to me, so for me, this thing is neutral. I have no reason to express it. But I think that to a certain extent, the continuation of the war is now in favor of Mr. Zelensky.
Former head of the Ukrainian army, current ambassador to Ukraine in London, Valery Zaluzhny, warned before the end of the North Atlantic Alliance to share his concerns. According to you, he cuts the administration of Donald Trump, or is he the one who is politically involved?
Let's take a look at the joint statement of the President, and the President of the Parliament, and the President of the Government of the Slovak Republic on foreign policy. Because there are new circumstances, everyone is going to change their foreign political orientation. Mr. Editor, NATO will fall apart in a week. Abusively said, the United States said they would not finance NATO further. They said they would not be in Europe. But a new security architecture must come. So it will be called otherwise. It will not be NATO, it will be something else. Maybe some countries will consider that they will want to be neutral in this respect. Yes, the probability of the collapse of existing international structures, which are not specific today, we are not talking about NATO, EU, etc., is huge. We have to do something with OSN. Unless the number of members of the Security Council of OSN expands, if OSN does not have stronger powers, then this project is also lost in importance. That is why it is necessary to be very flexible and active, not passive like the Slovak opposition, which is not able to just be a member of the EU and be NATO. And what if NATO falls apart? What will we do then?
In the case of withdrawals, the U.S. and security agencies in Europe have announced the victory of the German elections to the CDU-CSU that they want to quickly resume their military service. The first goal should be achieved this year. They also enjoy a military service in the Czech Republic. When will it be the case in Slovakia or the case of Slovakia? It is one of the topics you would like to discuss with the opposition.
You see, the topics that were an absolute taboo when I talked about the need to continue nuclear power plants. Robo Kalynyak talked about a lot of mechanisms, about the replacement services, that is, the gendarmes. We are trying to get those people into some contact with the army. The mandatory military service is not on the table. The mandatory military service is not on the table in Slovakia.